We can trace the modern story of oil back to the small town of Titusville, Pennsylvania. 1859, Colonel Drake and his team had just drilled down to 69 feet. Black gold gushed forth, and with the human population at a little over 1 billion, so began the oil age. It was a once-in-a-species energy bonanza, a gift of liquid fuel containing over 300 million years of stored solar energy. And then, like any other good species with a competitive advantage, we began to burn it all up. We developed technology after incredible technology, expanding the population sixfold, and increasing standards of living to levels not dreamed of by prior generations. However, this feeding frenzy was to such an extent that it is likely we will see the accessible abundance sucked dry in less than 250 years from that first gush. Blinded by its energy density and sheer versatility, we assumed it would be a resource that we could draw on forever. Generations were born into the oil age and then left it seeing the world fully transformed before their eyes. We weaved this never-ending growth expectation into our psyche, our economy, agriculture, and crafted a growth-based money system to leverage this potential. Compounding growth was the new normal, and it was largely on the back of cheap oil.
We all want better jobs and higher returns on investments, but we live on a finite planet.
A finite planet. But mathematics dictates that if you compound anything, using any growth percentage you choose, you will always reach a given limit. It just takes time. Take world oil production. It has clearly increased exponentially, climbing around 8-fold since 1950, and in the last 25 years we have burned half the oil that has ever been burned. But in 2005, something changed. From 2005 to the current day, global conventional oil production has effectively reached a plateau of 72 to 76 million barrels a day, despite a tripling of oil prices and a doubling of global expenditures. Economic theory is quite clear in that a tripling of price should bring about more supply. There is something troubling going on here that is outside the pages of conventional economics books. Peak oil refers to a physical or geological flow limit. This limit is the maximum rate of global oil extraction, and the concept is not tied to the last drop of oil in the ground, but rather to the point in time at which the supply of oil cannot be further increased. Peak oil is not a theory in the sense that it is somehow obscure or first needs to be proved. It is simply an observation of what happens when you extract a finite resource at an increasing rate. Take a straw to a glass of water. Start by sucking slowly and then increase your flow rate. The flow will peak and fall as you try to extract water from the more difficult ice. Of course, oil companies are being forced into more difficult ice all the time. Ultra-deep water, the Arctic, volatile countries, tar sands, fracking tied to oil. Moreover, these last-ditch efforts are only maintaining, not growing the current level of oil supply. Total global oil production is simply the summation of all the oil produced from all of the oil-producing countries. Peak oil has already occurred in over 80 oil-producing countries. This graph comes to us from the EIA, but not through conventional channels. Imagine what effect this would have if it was located on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Of course, in order to burn oil, we must find it first. So where could the production line possibly go from here? We are currently discovering about 1 barrel of oil for every 4 that we burn. World oil prices are at the levels that they are today because despite all our extra technology, extra effort, and extra expense, world oil production is essentially flatlining. All economies are always a function of available energy. Without available energy, there could never be an economy. Oil is the master energy resource in our trade-based economic paradigm because it fuels over 95% of the transport of our goods. This unique liquid fuel has a hand in virtually every single dollar of global GDP, and at present there is just no ready comparable substitute. Look around any Western room and it is tough to find anything that is not either made of oil, plastic, or arrived there because of oil. One tank of gasoline performs the work equivalent of about 3 years' worth of hard human labor. If you need to get a sense of what this means, drive your car until it runs out of gas and then push it back home. A tank of gasoline is about $60 and 3 years' human salary is typically a lot more. Social complexity only emerges in societies that have energy to spare. Human social complexity increased hand in hand with the higher net energy output we gained from burning wood, farming, burning whale oil, and then the hydrocarbons. So as a significant portion of our society was freed from the time-intensive tasks of growing food, transporting water, and heating shelters, they could do other very clever things like designing combustion engines or programming advanced chip technology. It is important to talk about net energy or energy return on energy invested, the energy left over after it is found, produced and transported that is available for society to do all of its complicated and clever things. The EROEI, or energy return on energy invested, from early oil fields was generally over 50 to 1. 1 barrel of oil or equivalent was used up in order to get over 50 barrels back. However, the unconventional oil of today produces less than 10 barrels of oil for every 1 invested. This means less energy for society to do everything else. The big question is, what is the minimum EROEI needed to support our current complexity? Unfortunately, on its own, it appears likely that the net energy of unconventional oil is insufficient to support a complex enough society to enable its extraction. When the net energy of today drops to an extent that it gets beyond the economic reach of individuals, we revert to more basic methods of getting energy. Like the tens of thousands of trees that have disappeared from parks this winter across Greece. It is fair to say that when we are frantically chopping down trees, we are not simultaneously working on solving the world's energy crisis. The Roman economy was dependent on the available energy of slaves. Easter Islanders had their firewood. Societies have faced the stern laws of thermodynamics before. Energy cannot be created or destroyed is essentially the first law of thermodynamics. Of course, we don't create energy when we burn fossil fuels. We were just lucky enough to stumble across stored high-order energy, and lots of it. The second law of thermodynamics is essentially that the order of energy degrades over time. Everything moves from order to disorder. All life exists by virtue of its ability to claim adequate energy before energy moves down in order. Plants are able to squeeze out enough energy from diffuse sunlight to make it through the seasons. And animals then take advantage of this stored biomass energy before it decays. They ingest it, enabling movement and sentience. Prior to hydrocarbons, humans managed an agrarian society from harvesting plants and animals. And then came the fossil fuels. Our current economy only exists by virtue of our ability to claim adequate energy from hydrocarbons. We simply add inputs and labor to produce all the complex products of our modern society. It bears repeating that our economy and the population it supports is only a function of the free, high-order energy locked up in hydrocarbons. For every calorie of food in the Western diet, we consume 10 calories of fossil fuel. We're essentially eating the stuff. We have constructed an economy, a money system, an agricultural system, as though energy from fossil fuels will increase indefinitely on a finite planet. As a society, we are in effect doubling down against the laws of thermodynamics. We often wonder what the Easter Islanders were thinking as they cut down that last tree. But what are we thinking as we drill for oil in the Arctic? Our money system, the paper money of today, is debt-based or fiat and is not backed up by anything. With the simple waving of a pen, money simultaneously becomes an asset of the bank and an interest-bearing liability of the signer. And this happens any time a bank loan is signed into being. This is how money is created at all levels. Governments borrow, banks borrow, and individuals borrow. The principal amount is a zero-sum game if it is paid back, but what about the interest on all that debt? The interest on every single loan must be obtained from the big wide world, essentially from value that is not already in the system. Therefore, it must be acquired by expanding the economy. It is one massive pyramid scheme because if ever the economy stops growing, who's paying the interest? Money, debt, growth, compound interest, they are all joined at the hip. Here again we have compounding growth in a finite system. And how much more compounding debt can our economy take on? In the last 30 years, worldwide debt has absolutely soared and has leveraged unparalleled growth in pretty much all asset classes. The total of all US debt is now unprecedented, somewhere over 300% of GDP. Sovereign debt is now also sailing off into uncharted waters, with US government debt recently blowing past US GDP. The current debt level is so immense that the US Federal Reserve now purchases the majority of US Treasury paper, just to keep interest rates at a manageable low level. But the US is not alone in this printing frenzy. In a last-ditch effort to maintain solvency, all major central banks are in rabid print mode, monetizing assets by the tens of billions every single month. But all this debt is backed up by nothing except future energy-dependent growth. Baked into every piece of debt, every bond, every company's stock, and every slick derivative is the unchallenged expectation of increasing net energy on our finite planet. Every upward move of the symbol ticker is essentially a statement that we don't understand exponential growth and we can flaunt the laws of thermodynamics indefinitely. But this debt bubble, like all bubbles, cannot inflate indefinitely. When the total amount of debt in the system stops growing, the game is up. The pyramid scheme unravels and the result is a deflationary collapse. Within the very near future, this massive debt bubble will likely burst on the peak of global oil supply. As a society, it is time to move beyond denial and have an honest and fundamental assessment of this economy of ours. Business as usual and the current growth paradigm is over. With the last gasp of the oil age, an Apollo-style push to confront the energy issue should be front and center as the challenge of our generation. Let's understand the implications of never-ending growth and why we must give it up. We must transition to a realistic future under the confines of an energy system that has a future. Invest in local businesses, local farmers and the local food shed, relocalizing the entire community for all aspects of life. A whole new paradigm awaits us. Let's get to work.